Curse of the Terracotta Army. The Terracotta Army holds immense cultural significance in Chinese history, serving as a testament to the ingenuity and grandeur of ancient China. This collection of terracotta sculptures depicts the armies of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China, and was created to protect him in the afterlife. The sheer scale and detail of the figures reveal much about the military, artistic, and technological advancements of the time. One key aspect of its significance lies in what it reveals about ancient Chinese beliefs regarding the afterlife. The Terracotta Army was meant to safeguard Emperor Qin Shi Huang in his next journey, demonstrating the importance of ancestor worship and the meticulous preparations made for life beyond death. It also highlights the emperor's desire for immortality and his unparalleled power during his reign. Moreover, the Terracotta Army symbolizes broader advancements in China's cultural heritage field. Its preservation and study have contributed significantly to understanding not only the Qin dynasty, but also the evolution of Chinese art and culture over centuries. As a cultural icon, the terracotta warriors act as ambassadors of Chinese history, captivating global audiences with their intricate craftsmanship and historical depth. From an artistic perspective, the Terracotta Army is considered one of the most monumental sculptural achievements ever created. Scholars describe it as quite simply the biggest tableau of sculpture made anywhere in the planet, ever. Each figure's unique features and expressions reflect the sophistication of ancient artisans, making the army both a functional funerary artifact and a masterpiece of human creativity. In modern times, the Terracotta Army continues to inspire awe and foster international connections. Exhibitions around the world showcase these statues, allowing people to experience the charm of China's rich past. They stand as enduring representations of Emperor Qin Shi Huang's legacy, offering insights into the values, fears, and aspirations of ancient Chinese society. Ultimately, the Terracotta Army is more than just an archaeological wonder. It is a bridge between the living and the dead, the past and the present, and China and the rest of the world. Now read the story together. The Emperor's Secret Tomb. It was supposed to be the discovery of a lifetime, a chance for Dr. Lin Mei, an archaeologist specializing in ancient Chinese history, to uncover the secrets of one of the most enigmatic figures in human history. Emperor Qin Shi Huang. Known as the first emperor of unified China, Qin Shi Huang's reign was marked by monumental achievements and ruthless tyranny. But his greatest mystery lay buried beneath layers of earth, an untouched tomb rumored to hold treasures beyond imagination and dangers that had claimed countless lives over centuries. The beginning, a hidden legacy. Dr. Lin Mei arrived at Mount Li, where the emperor's mausoleum was said to be located, with a team of researchers and historians. The site had long been shrouded in myth and legend, with tales describing rivers of mercury flowing through a replica of his empire inside the tomb. According to ancient texts, the tomb was protected not only by intricate traps, but also by supernatural forces meant to deter intruders from disturbing the emperor's eternal rest. As they began their excavation, strange occurrences plagued the team almost immediately. Tools would go missing without explanation, equipment malfunctioned inexplicably, and faint whispers echoed through the tunnels late at night. At first, Mei dismissed these incidents as mere superstition or fatigue, but deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone was watching them. One evening, while examining a newly unearthed artifact, Mei noticed something unusual etched into its surface, symbols resembling those found on the terracotta warriors. Her colleague, Zhang Wei, warned her against touching it further. "These aren't just decorations," he muttered nervously. "They're warnings." Before Mei could respond, the ground trembled slightly, sending dust raining down from above. Phantom screams echoed through the chamber, growing louder and more intense with each passing second. Shadows danced across the walls, taking on forms too grotesque to describe. It was as though the spirits of every worker who had died building the tomb had come alive, demanding release. The middle, whispers from beyond. Desperate for answers, Mai consulted local historians and shamans, hoping to decipher the symbols and understand the nature of the disturbances. What she learned chilled her to the bone. According to legend, thousands of workers were buried alive within the tomb to ensure its secrets remained hidden. Their souls were bound to the Emperor's will, cursed to serve him even in death. Summoning courage, May attempted to return the artifact to its original location. But when she approached the chamber where it had been found, the ground trembled violently, sending debris raining down from above. Phantom screams echoed through the tunnels, growing louder and more intense with each passing second. Shadows danced across the walls, taking on forms too grotesque to describe. It was as though the spirits of every artisan, every forgotten soul, had come alive, demanding release. Finally, May emerged into the main excavation area, gasping for breath. For a brief moment, she thought she was safe. Then, without warning, a figure materialized before her, a tall man dressed in ancient armor, his face obscured by a helmet. He raised a skeletal hand, pointing directly at her. "You will join us," he hissed, his voice reverberating unnaturally in the confined space. Before she could scream, the vision faded, leaving her alone once more, save for the oppressive sense of dread pressing down on her. The end. Breaking the curse. Determined to break the curse, May sought help from a renowned shaman named Master Loyu, known for his ability to communicate with ancestral spirits. Though skeptical at first, Master Lu agreed to assist after hearing about the tomb's dark history. Over tea, he explained that breaking a curse often required confronting its origin head-on. Armed with knowledge and determination, May returned to the excavation site under the cover of night. Following Master Liu's instructions, she placed the artifact atop a makeshift altar constructed from stones and lit incense around it. As she recited an incantation aloud, the ground trembled slightly and a warm breeze swept through the chamber. The artifact glowed brightly for a moment before shattering into dust. When May returned home, the disturbances ceased entirely. Tools no longer moved on their own, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. Though she's since returned to archaeology, the memory of that night continues to haunt her. Sometimes when she sits alone at her desk, she swears she can still hear the faint scratching of quills against parchment. And whenever she passes by a mirror, she half expects to see a spectral figure standing just over her shoulder. Because deep down she knows, one wrong decision, one careless moment, and everything can change in an instant. Historical context. Life and reign of Emperor Qin Shi Huang. Emperor Qin Shi Huang's reign, 259 to 210 BCE, is both celebrated and feared in Chinese history. He is credited with unifying China for the first time, standardizing weights, measures, currency, and writing systems, and initiating the construction of the Great Wall. However, his rule was also marked by brutality. He ordered the burning of books and burying scholars alive to suppress dissent. His obsession with immortality led him to commission vast projects, including his elaborate tomb guarded by the Terracotta army. Qin Shi Huang's search for eternal life ultimately consumed him. Historical accounts suggest he ingested mercury-laden elixirs believing they would grant longevity, which may have contributed to his untimely death. His tomb remains largely unexcavated due to fears of triggering curses or damaging its contents, leaving much of his legacy shrouded in mystery. This blend of fact and folklore creates a compelling narrative that continues to captivate audiences interested in the macabre and unexplained aspects of history. Accursed Locket. It was supposed to be a simple trip, a chance for me, an antique enthusiast with a penchant for uncovering hidden treasures, to explore a small flea market tucked away in the countryside. Among the dusty stalls and weathered trinkets, one item caught my eye, a delicate silver locket engraved with intricate floral patterns. It seemed out of place amidst the mismatched clutter, almost as if it were waiting for me to find it. The beginning, a curious find. I purchased the locket without hesitation, drawn inexplicably to its beauty despite its tarnished surface. The vendor, an elderly man with piercing blue eyes, hesitated before handing it over. "Be careful with that," he muttered cryptically, his tone laced with unease. I dismissed his warning as mere superstition, eager to add the piece to my growing collection of vintage jewelry. That evening, as I cleaned the locket at my desk, I noticed something unusual. Inside the tiny hinge was a faded photograph of a young woman dressed in Victorian-era clothing, her expression somber yet hauntingly familiar. Flipping the image revealed faint handwriting scrawled on the back. "To Eleanor, forever yours." Curiosity piqued. I began researching the name Eleanor online, hoping to uncover the story behind the mysterious artifact. What I discovered chilled me to the bone. According to local archives, Eleanor Graves had been a prominent figure in the late 19th century. A wealthy socialite whose life ended tragically after she allegedly took her own life, following a scandal involving a forbidden love affair. Her death was rumored to have been linked to a cursed object passed down through her family, a locket said to bring misfortune to anyone who possessed it. At first, I laughed off the notion of curses, attributing such tales to folklore designed to sell sensational stories. But within hours of bringing the locket home, strange things began happening. The middle, whispers from the past. That night, sleep eluded me. Every sound echoed unnaturally loud, the creak of floorboards, the rustle of curtains swaying despite the absence of wind. At first, I told myself it was just the old house settling, but deep down, I knew better. This wasn't normal. Around midnight I heard it, a soft humming coming from somewhere near my bedside table. When I turned to investigate, the locket lay open on the surface, glowing faintly in the moonlight streaming through my window. Panic surged through me as I reached for it, only to feel an icy chill radiating from the metal. Suddenly, the room temperature plummeted, frost creeping along the walls as a faint scent of lavender filled the air. Before I could react, a figure materialized beside me, a woman dressed in tattered Victorian-era clothing, her face pale and gaunt. She introduced herself as Eleanor Graves, her voice soft yet tinged with sorrow. "They won't let me rest," she whispered, tears streaming down her translucent cheeks. "Not until the truth is revealed." Desperate to understand, I asked her what she meant. Instead of answering directly, she pointed toward the locket still clutched in my hand. As I examined it closer, new details emerged, tiny symbols etched into the silver frame that hadn't been visible earlier. They pulsed faintly, as though alive, drawing me deeper into their mystery. Summoning courage, I followed the symbol's lead, retracing my steps through the labyrinthine corridors of my mind. Memories flooded back, not mine, but Eleanor's. I saw flashes of opulent ballrooms, clandestine meetings in shadowy gardens, and finally a confrontation with a man whose face remained obscured by darkness. His voice boomed menacingly, "You will pay for your betrayal." Then, without warning, the vision dissolved, leaving me gasping for breath. The room returned to normal, or so I thought. That's when I noticed it. Objects around me began moving on their own. Books flew off shelves, chairs scraped across the floor, and the faint sound of whispers grew louder, overlapping in a cacophony of anguish and despair. Panic surged through me as I bolted from the room, retracing my steps through the labyrinthine corridors of the house. But the landscape had shifted. Familiar landmarks were gone, replaced by endless hallways stretching impossibly far in every direction. Doors appeared where none had been before, leading to chambers filled with flickering candlelight and ghostly figures. One apparition stood out among the rest, a man dressed in black robes, his face obscured by shadows. He introduced himself as Lord Harrington, Eleanor's forbidden lover turned tormentor, his voice rich yet tinged with malice. He recounted the tragic tale of how he had cursed the locket to bind Eleanor's soul to the mortal plane, ensuring she would suffer eternally for rejecting him. "You shouldn't have opened this," he hissed. his skeletal hand reaching toward me. Now you are part of the curse. The end, escape and reflection. Somehow, I managed to break free from the trance. Whether the locket slammed shut on its own, or I somehow willed it closed, I will never know. All I remember is running faster than I ever had in my life. I burst out of the house and didn't stop until I reached the safety of a nearby cafe, where I spent the rest of the night staring blankly at the steam rising from my coffee cup. That morning, I returned home cautiously, half expecting the locket to still be lying on my desk. But it was gone, leaving behind only a faint impression of frost on the wood surface. Though I searched every corner of my apartment, I couldn't find it anywhere. Over the next few days, I pored over historical records about Eleanor graves, desperate to make sense of what I had witnessed. According to accounts, the locket had been missing since her death, believed lost or destroyed. Some say it carries the weight of her suffering, binding anyone who possesses it to relive her tragic fate. Though I've since returned to collecting antiques, the memory of that night continues to haunt me. Sometimes, when I sit alone at my desk, I swear I can still hear the faint scratching of quills against parchment. And whenever I pass by a mirror, I half expect to see a spectral figure standing just over my shoulder. Because deep down, I know, one wrong decision, one careless moment, and everything can change in an instant. All that knew my name. Once upon a time, on a dismal, rainy afternoon, I found myself wandering through an old, dusty thrift store. As I browsed the forgotten trinkets and toys, something peculiar caught my eye. There, tucked between chipped figurines, was an antique doll with lifeless blue eyes and golden curls. It wore a dainty lace dress, and its price tag read $2. For some reason, this doll seemed familiar, but I couldn't quite place it. I hesitated that the cheap price was tempting. I picked it up, feeling a chill run down my spine as my fingers brushed against its icy cheek. I noticed something written on its wrist. My name, faded but legible. I felt a wave of coldness wash over me. How could this be? I had never owned a doll like this before. I took the doll home, telling myself I was overreacting. That night, I placed it on a shelf, facing the wall, not wanting its glassy eyes on me while I slept. But when I woke up, there it was, on my nightstand. Facing me, its tiny hand pressed against the wood, as if it had been knocking. I tried to convince myself I had moved it and forgotten, but deep down, I knew that wasn't true. I decided to get rid of the doll. I threw it in the trash, drove miles to dump it in a public bin, and even waited to make sure no one had fished it out. That night, I locked my door and closed every window, trying to feel safe. But as I drifted off to sleep, I heard a tiny voice whisper my name in my ear. I screamed, turned on the light, and there it was, sitting on my chest, smiling up at me with those dead eyes. Desperate, I called my mother. She told me, "You don't remember, do you? That doll was your favorite when you were little." I couldn't believe it, but then she dropped a bombshell. "When you were 6, you told me it talked back." That night, memories came flooding back. I remembered a sweet little voice in the shadows of my childhood bedroom. I had forgotten, but it hadn't, and now it was waiting. I woke up to tiny hands around my throat, gasping for air. The doll sat on my chest, arms outstretched, mouth open, whispering, "You let me in." Now I can't sleep. I hear tiny footsteps, the creak of my closet, and always that whisper, "You let me in." I'm warning you, be careful what you bring home from those old shops. Some things are better left forgotten. The next day, I went back to the thrift store, hoping to find some answers. The store was empty, except for the old lady who owned it. I asked her about the doll, and she looked at me with a mixture of confusion and fear. "I don't know where it came from," she said. "It just showed up one day. I tried to sell it, but no one would buy it. I should have known it was cursed." I left the store, feeling more confused than ever. When I got home, I decided to research the history of the doll. I found out that it was a rare antique, made in the early 1900s. But what was even more shocking was that several previous owners had reported strange occurrences, similar to what I had experienced. One owner claimed that the doll would move around her house at night, while another said that it would change positions when she wasn't looking. A third owner even reported that the doll would speak to her in a child's voice. I felt a chill run down my spine. I had to do something to get rid of the doll once and for all. I decided to perform a cleansing ritual, hoping it would rid me of the evil spirit that seemed to be trapped inside the doll. I gathered together a sage smudge stick, some salt, and a few other items. I lit the sage and walked around my apartment, cleansing every corner. I sprinkled salt around the perimeter, hoping to create a barrier between me and the doll. As I performed the ritual, I felt a strange energy in the room. The air seemed to crackle with electricity, and I could feel the presence of something evil. I finished the ritual and collapsed on my bed, exhausted. For a few nights, everything seemed normal. I slept peacefully, and I didn't hear any strange noises. But then one night, I woke up to the sound of tiny footsteps. I turned on the light, and there it was. The doll, sitting on my chest, smiling up at me with those dead eyes. I screamed, but no sound came out. The doll's mouth opened, and it spoke in a child's voice. "You can't get rid of me. I'm a part of you now." I felt a wave of hopelessness wash over me. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't sleep, and I couldn't get rid of the doll. I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare that I couldn't escape. Days turned into weeks, and I became a shell of my former self. I was exhausted, both physically and mentally. I couldn't focus on anything, and I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that seemed to follow me everywhere I went. One day, I received a package in the mail. It was from my mother, and inside was a small wooden box. She told me that it was a family heirloom, passed down from generation to generation. She said that it had the power to protect me from evil spirits. I opened the box, and inside was a small, intricately carved amulet. It was made of silver, with a sapphire stone in the center. I put it on, and immediately I felt a sense of calm wash over me. That night, I went to bed, feeling hopeful for the first time in weeks. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I fell into a deep, peaceful sleep. When I woke up, the doll was gone. I searched for my apartment, but I couldn't find it anywhere. I felt a sense of relief washing over me. I knew that I was free. I still have the amulet to this day. It's a constant reminder of the strange and terrifying experience I went through. I'm just grateful that I was able to break the curse and move on with my life. So, if you ever find yourself in an old thrift store, and you see a strange doll that seems to be calling out to you, be careful. Some things are better left on the shelf, forgotten by time. And if you ever hear a tiny voice whispering your name in the darkness, don't ignore it. It might be a warning. The door in the basement, an ancient place with more than a century of history in its bones. You know the type. Floors that groan under your feet and doors that never quite close right. But the basement? That was something else entirely. From the moment I set foot near that cellar door, chills ran up my spine. It wasn't just cold and damp down there. No, something felt wrong even. I tried to brush it off as my mind playing tricks, but I couldn't ignore one peculiar detail. 3 deadbolts on the outside of the door. It was as if someone had tried to keep something in, rather than intruders out. Curiosity got the better of me, so I asked the landlord about it. He fixed me with a long, hard stare before muttering, "Just an old storage space. Best to leave it alone." That should have been enough to keep me away. Should have been. But one night, as I was lying in bed, I heard it. A sound like fingernails dragging across wood, coming from below. My breath caught in my throat as I listened. Then came the knocking. Slow, deliberate. Tap, dot. Tapatites. Tap-tot. It echoed up the stairwell, and I sat bolt upright. Every muscle in my body froze. I was alone in the house. There was no earthly reason for anyone to be down there. Heart pounding, I crept to the top of the stairs and stared at the door. The deadbolts were undone. I swear I never touched them. A raspy exhale drifted up from the darkness below, and then, in a voice that was almost, but not quite, "My own?" I heard the words that still haunt me to this day. "I had been waiting for you." I had always avoided the basement. The house I moved into was old, more than 100 years, with creaky floorboards and doors that never quite shut properly. The basement, however, was different. It was cold, damp, and wrong. The moment I stepped near the door, a deep, unsettling feeling would creep up my spine. I told myself it was just my imagination, but every time I passed the basement entrance, I noticed something odd. The door had 3 deadbolts on the outside, as if someone had locked something in rather than keeping intruders out. I asked the landlord about it. He looked at me for a long moment before shaking his head. "Just an old storage space. Best to leave it alone." That should have been enough. It should have been my reason to never touch the door. But one night, while lying in bed, I heard something. A dull, dragging sound, like fingertips scraping along the wood from the other side. I held my breath, listening. Then came the knock. Slow, deliberate. It echoed up the stairwell, a rhythmic tap, 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 tap. I sat up. Every muscle in my body froze. I was alone. There was no reason for anyone to be in the basement. I crept to the top of the stairs, staring at the door. The deadbolts were unlocked. I did not remember unlocking them. A low, raspy breath exhaled from the darkness below. And then, in a voice that was almost, but not quite, my own, I heard the words, "I have been waiting for you." For days after that, I convinced myself I imagined it. That exhaustion was playing tricks on me. I told myself I had simply forgotten to lock the bolts. But the unease stayed, gnawing at me, whispering doubts in my mind. Then one evening, I returned home to find the basement door open. The hinges groaned as it swayed slightly, revealing nothing but blackness beyond the first few steps. My stomach knotted. I reached for my phone to turn on the flashlight. My thumb hovered over the screen. I did not want to see. But the whisper came again, closer this time. "Come down." I ran. I locked the door and shoved a chair beneath the handle. My hands trembled as I backed away. My chest felt tight. My breath was shallow. The house was too quiet, pressing in on me like a held breath. I sat on the couch, clutching my phone, waiting for something, anything, for a sign that I was still alone. Then the knocking started again. But this time, it came from inside the house. I did not sleep that night. Every shadow stretched too far. Every creak on the floor made my skin crawl. When the sun finally rose, I decided I had enough. I called my landlord, demanding answers. He was silent for a long time. Then he said, "If the door is open, you need to leave." My blood ran cold. "I am serious," he continued. "Pack your things and leave before it gets dark." "What is down there?" I asked, gripping the phone. My voice sounded hoarse, dry. He hesitated. "I do not know, but the last tenant, he was not the first to disappear." I did not ask any more questions. I grabbed my bag and walked out without looking back. That was 2 weeks ago. And yet, every night, I wake up knocking at my new apartment. And each time, it is getting closer, the farmhouse whisper. As I stared at the blinking cursor on my laptop screen, I realized that I was no longer in control. It all started when I decided to spend a month in a rural farmhouse to focus on my writing. The place was cheap, isolated, and surrounded by endless fields of corn that swayed like waves under the pale moonlight. But as days passed, strange things began happening around me. Things that made sleep nearly impossible. When I first arrived at the farmhouse, it seemed perfect for solitude. The air smelled of damp earth and dried hay, and the creaky wooden floors added a rustic charm. My unit faced an old barn across the narrow dirt path. At first, I assumed it was abandoned. Its doors were always shut tight, and I never saw anyone coming or going. But late one night, while sipping coffee and staring absent-mindedly out my bedroom window, I noticed something odd. Through a tiny crack in the barn's weathered door, I caught a glimpse of movement. It wasn't much, a shadow shifting behind the wood, but it piqued my curiosity. Over the next few nights, I kept seeing flashes of light spilling through that same gap. Sometimes soft, warm glows illuminated the interior. Other times harsher beams flickered erratically. There was also music, slow folk tunes drifting faintly through the still night air, though they stopped abruptly whenever I tried to investigate further. At first, I convinced myself it was nothing more than a tenant with peculiar habits. Maybe he worked nights or preferred solitude, just like me. Still, unease gnawed at the edges of my mind. One evening, unable to resist any longer, I grabbed my binoculars, a relic from bird-watching trips, and trained them on the mysterious barn. What I saw froze me mid-breath. A tall figure stood near what looked like a workbench topped with tools. He wore overalls and faced the reflective surface of a large metal sheet leaning against the far wall. But here's the thing, his reflection didn't match his movements. When he lifted his shoulders, the mirrored version stayed perfectly still. When he raised a hand to adjust his hat, the reflection's arm remained glued to its side. My pulse quickened as I watched, transfixed. Then, without warning, the reflection turned its head directly toward my window. Its eyes locked onto mine. I stumbled backward, knocking over a lamp in my haste to retreat. By the time I gathered enough courage to look again, both the figure and the light had vanished. The barn was dark once more. Over the following days, the occurrences grew more frequent and more unsettling. Late at night, I'd hear faint whispers seeping through the shared walls. Occasionally, the folk music returned, louder this time, accompanied by rhythmic tapping sounds, like someone hammering nails into wood. Each morning, I woke up exhausted, haunted by fragmented dreams of distorted faces staring back at me from mirrors. Desperate for answers, I approached Mr. Hargrove, the elderly farmer who owned the property. His workshop smelled of oil and rusted machinery stacked haphazardly on every available surface. "No one uses that barn," he said flatly after I described what I'd seen. According to him, the structure had been sealed for decades. "It's not even safe to enter." His dismissive tone only fueled my unease. That night, curiosity overwhelmed fear. Armed with a flashlight and a deep breath, I ventured outside. Standing outside the barn door, I pressed my ear against the wood. Inside, I heard a dull echo of movement, something shifting far off in the darkness. Summoning courage I didn't know I possessed, I pushed against the door, but it wouldn't budge. It felt stuck, almost as if something on the other side was holding it shut. Frustrated yet terrified, I called Mr. Hargrove again. He sounded tired when he answered, but repeated his warning, "Leave the barn alone." His refusal to explain only deepened my unease. That night, the noises escalated once more. Heavy, uneven footsteps echoed inside, followed by a series of quick taps that made my skin crawl. A desperate whisper rose from behind the door, pleading in a language I couldn't comprehend. I backed away, my pulse racing, and locked myself in my bedroom for the rest of the night. The next day, I convinced Mr. Hargrove to accompany me to the supposedly abandoned barn. Reluctantly, he agreed, muttering about liability issues under his breath. Using a crowbar, we pried open the door, which swung open with a groan. Inside, the air felt thick and stale, carrying the faint scent of mildew. Dust coated every surface, and cobwebs hung like tattered curtains from the corners of the ceiling. Yet, despite the apparent abandonment, something felt off. We explored each corner cautiously, flipping switches that did nothing to illuminate the space. In the center of the room, Mr. Hargrove paused, frowning at a dusty mirror leaning precariously against the far wall. "This shouldn't be here," he muttered. running a finger along its ornate frame. As he adjusted it slightly, the glass shimmered unnaturally, reflecting not our images, but a shadowy figure standing inches away from us. Mr. Hargrove yelped, dropping the mirror, which clattered harmlessly to the floor. "Did you see that?" he demanded, his voice trembling. I nodded, too shaken to speak. Whatever lurked in this barn wasn't bound by physical laws. It existed somewhere between reality and nightmare. Suddenly the lights flickered on, revealing the source of the earlier noises. Across the room, a translucent silhouette materialized, its form flickering like static on an old television screen. It bore a striking resemblance to the man I'd seen in the window, except now his features were blurred, almost liquid-like. His mouth opened impossibly wide, emitting a guttural moan that reverberated through the walls. Without thinking, I grabbed Mr. Hargrove's arm and pulled him toward the exit. We fled the barn, slamming the door shut behind us. Back in the safety of my farmhouse, we sat in stunned silence, trying to process what we'd witnessed. Days later, Mr. Hargrove informed me that he planned to seal off the entire barn indefinitely. Workers arrived shortly thereafter, boarding up doors and windows, effectively quarantining the cursed space. Despite these precautions, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever resided in that barn hadn't truly left. Every so often I'd catch glimpses of distorted reflections in my own mirror, as if the entity was testing the boundaries of its confinement. One particularly restless night, I awoke to find my bedroom bathed in an eerie glow. The source? A familiar tune playing softly from the direction of the sealed-off barn. Heart pounding, I crept to the window and peered outside. Across the gap, the once dark barn now radiated with golden light. Through the cracks in the boards, I saw the man again, standing motionless before his mirror. This time, however, his reflection smiled, a cruel, knowing grin that sent chills down my spine. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the light vanished, leaving me alone in the suffocating darkness. To this day, I avoid looking too closely at mirrors, terrified of what might stare back. Because deep down, I know the truth. Some reflections aren't meant to reflect. They're meant to trap. The enigmatic setting. The road to Blackwood Ruins was long and winding, carved into the barren landscape like a scar left by forgotten hands. The further we drove, the more the terrain seemed to change, not physically, but in the atmosphere. The land felt heavier, as though the very earth beneath us carried the weight of 1,000 untold stories. I sat in the back of the Jeep, my fingers curled around the fraying leather strap of my bag, listening to the rhythmic hum of the tires skidding across loose gravel. The scent of parched soil and distant bonfire smoke hung in the air. I turned to look at our group of 6, each of us drawn to Blackwood for different reasons. Some for curiosity, others for something deeper. Something they wouldn't dare say aloud. The travelers. Ethan Carter sat in the passenger seat, flipping through a battered notebook filled with scribbled notes and hand-drawn sketches of the ruins. A journalist known for his relentless pursuit of exposing myths, he had an air of restless skepticism. "It's just stories," he muttered, scribbling something down. "Fear feeds fear. People see what they want to see." Hannah Lawson, our historian, turned from the window, her expression unreadable. "That's what they said about Raven's Hollow," she murmured. "And look what happened to those who disturbed it." Ethan smirked. "And what happened? Really? Did someone vanish into thin air?" Before Hannah could retort, David Holt, our local guide, cleared his throat. "No one vanishes, sir, but they do not return the same." His voice was low, measured, too careful. I watched him closely. He was in his early 40s, his sun-worn skin and deep-set eyes hinting at years spent navigating places most people avoided. Unlike the others, he didn't fidget, didn't challenge. He only warned. Behind me, Madeline Parker sat with her arms crossed, clearly uncomfortable. She had agreed to come at the last minute, though she wouldn't say why. So what's the rule again? She asked. No one stays past sundown. David nodded. That is correct. His knuckles tightened around the steering wheel. No one should remain when the sun dies. The ruins wake up at night. Madeline scoffed. It's an empty ruin, David. What's going to wake up? The bricks. Ryan Jacobs, our documentary filmmaker, lifted his camera from his lap, adjusting the focus. Empty places still hold echoes, he said, almost to himself. Sometimes that's worse than people. The Jeep slowed as we neared the final stretch. A worn-out wooden sign stood at the entrance of the path leading to the ruins, its faded letters barely legible. Enter at your own risk. No one permitted after sunset. Beneath it, someone had scrawled a warning in red chalk. The dead do not rest here. Arrival. The ruins of the Blackwood emerged through the veil of afternoon light, its crumbling stone walls covered in creeping vines, as though nature itself was trying to bury its secrets. The entrance was massive, flanked by arched doorways leading to what once were market stalls, now hollowed out by time. David parked the Jeep near the entrance and stepped out first. He stood still for a moment, listening, his head tilted slightly. The rest of us piled out, stretching our legs, shaking off the stiffness of the drive. The air had changed. It wasn't the wind. There was no wind. Just a hollow silence, the kind that only exists in places where too much has been lost. Ryan was the first to break it. All right, he said, lifting his camera. Let's start with some wide shots before we split up. As he filmed, Hannah wandered towards the outer walls, tracing her fingers over the worn stone. This place is older than records say, she murmured. You can feel it. Feel what? Ethan asked, setting up his own recording equipment. She hesitated. Like, time has layers here. Madeline rolled her eyes. That's vague. Ryan shifted his focus toward the courtyard, where the remnants of the royal manor loomed in the distance. He zoomed in. A shape flickered in the lens. He lowered the camera. Nothing. Just shadows stretching unnaturally against the stone. I think we should move. David, who had been silent, turned abruptly. No manner, he said sharply. Hannah frowned. Why? David exhaled through his nose as though weighing his words. That is where the sorcerer's curse fell hardest. Ethan chuckled. We're chasing shadows, David. He lifted his camera. And shadows make the best stories. The descent into mystery. We entered through the main courtyard, our boots crunching over loose stones. Statues with hollow eyes lined the entrance, their faces worn away by centuries of wind. The sun hung low, stretching a golden light across the ruins, but it felt unnatural, as though something watched from behind the stone. Hannah whispered under her breath, reciting a prayer. What are you doing? Madeline asked. Respecting the dead. Do you think something is actually here? Hannah hesitated. Does it matter? Ethan scoffed, walking ahead. Superstition keeps stories alive, not spirits. But David's face had hardened. Then tell me, sir, why do the villagers refuse to cross the threshold? Ethan paused, but didn't answer. Ryan, distracted, lifted his camera again. He panned across the abandoned temple, its steps crumbling. A statue of the princess still stood at the entrance. As his lens focused, the statue's reflection in his lens wasn't facing forward. Ryan blinked, lowered the camera. The statue hadn't moved, but in the glass, it had turned toward him. The moment stretched long and silent. Then, a scream tore through the ruins. The presence revealed. It came from Madeline. She stood frozen near a doorway, her hands shaking. There's someone inside, she whispered. Ethan rushed over. Go. But as we reached her side, we saw it. Not someone. Something. Beyond the doorway, in the hollowed chamber where the princess once lived, a shape loomed in the shadows. Not moving, not breathing, Just watching. David sucked in a sharp breath. We should leave. Now. Ryan, against better judgment, lifted his camera. Click. Aight. The flash went off. And in that brief burst of light, the shape was suddenly closer. Inches from the doorway. The temperature dropped. The shadows twisted. A whisper carried on windless air. You were warned. Hannah grabbed my wrist. We have to go. And suddenly the ruins felt alive. The statues seemed to lean forward. The whispers weren't whispers anymore. They were pleading, voices layered on top of each other, weeping, calling, warning. As we stumbled backward toward the exit, the last thing I saw was the statue's hollow eyes, still staring, still turned toward us, still knowing. Here's the expanded second paragraph with US-friendly names, added suspense, multiple POVs, more supporting character development, and tension-building dialogue. The first signs of disturbance. By the time we left the courtyard, the sun was already sinking lower, stretching shadows long and jagged across the ruins. The golden light that had bathed the ancient stones moments ago had shifted to something murkier, the edges of the world blurring as if reality itself was thinning. David, our guide, kept glancing at the horizon. He didn't have to say it. We all felt the change in the air. It had thickened, charged with an almost electrical weight, as though something unseen was stirring. But Ethan, ever the skeptic, seemed unfazed. He checked his watch. Still have about an hour until sunset. Relax. David didn't look at him. Time moves different here, he muttered. Hannah frowned. What do you mean? David exhaled slowly. Too slowly. You'll see. No one liked that answer. The first omen. Ryan had been walking a few steps ahead, his camera rolling, scanning the crumbling stone pillars that lined the path leading to the temple's entrance. He zoomed in, adjusting the focus, and then stopped. Guys. We all turned toward him. He took a step back, staring at the small screen on his camera. He swallowed. I just saw something. What? Madeline asked, stepping closer. He turned the camera around so we could see. On the playback, the temple's entrance was empty at first, just the towering archway, cast in deepening shadow. Then, for a brief half-second, a figure moved. A woman, standing just past the doorway. But what made my stomach twist? She had no face. Madeline took a step back. That's a glitch, right? Ryan ran his hand over his mouth, trying to convince himself. Yeah, probably. Hannah snatched the camera, rewound the footage. Play. Pause. There she was, featureless. A shape just barely visible through the darkness. Not quite a shadow. Not quite solid. David, Hannah whispered. Does this happen a lot? David didn't respond. Madeline's hand tightened around her backpack strap. We should go. But Ethan, standing near the temple steps, only shook his head. No, we should go inside. The temple and the whispers. The entrance was wide enough for 3 people to walk side by side, but no one wanted to be first. Ethan, ever the fearless one, took the lead. The second his foot crossed the threshold, the temperature dropped by at least 10 degrees. David let out a quiet curse. We should not be in here. No one disagreed, but no one moved to leave, either. Inside, the temple was massive. Its domed ceiling cracked open, letting slivers of fading sunlight cut across intricately carved walls. Dust particles hung thick in the air, glittering in the light. Ryan turned on his camera's night vision mode, letting it pick up details our eyes couldn't. Look at these carvings, Hannah murmured, running her fingers over the weathered stone walls. Etched into the stone were rows of figures, all bowing toward a towering presence in the center. The longer I stared at the carving, the less human that figure looked. It had too many arms. Its face was indistinct, blurred, like it had been erased on purpose. Not exactly welcoming, Madeline muttered. Some kind of deity? Ryan asked. David shook his head. Not one we should be speaking of. Ethan chuckled, but it was forced. You're acting like saying its name will wake it up. David didn't smile. Some names were never meant to be spoken. Then the whispering started. It was faint at first. Just a breath of sound. No wind. Not echoes. A layered voice. Female. Ryan turned. Did you guys hear that? Yeah, I murmured. Maybe it's... Then the voice got closer. It was behind us. Not echoing. Not distant. Right. White. Behind. Us. Get out, David said under his breath. The whispering grew louder, more insistent. I didn't understand the words, but the tone was unmistakable. Leave. The room felt smaller, the air pressing in on us. Hannah reached for my wrist, gripping it tightly. We should. Then something crashed. Something is here. The sound was like a stone hitting stone, but it came from above us. Ryan jerked his camera up, panning to the half-collapsed ceiling. Nothing. But that wasn't the unsettling part. The carvings on the walls had changed. The bowing figures, they were now facing the entrance. Facing us. No one spoke. Then, at the very top of the temple archway, a small pile of pebbles tumbled down, as if something had just shifted its weight up there. I turned my flashlight upward. Nothing. But I felt it. The whispering stopped, and the silence was so much worse. Ethan broke first. We're done here. He turned toward the door, and froze. What? I whispered. He didn't move, just stared straight ahead, wide-eyed. Ryan lifted his camera. He saw it first, and when I turned to look, there was a handprint on the stone doorway. It wasn't there when we entered. The retreat and the unfinished story. David led us out of the temple fast, pushing us past the threshold back into the ruins. The instant we crossed the line into the open air, it felt like we could breathe again. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, Ethan let out a sharp breath and ran a hand through his hair. Okay, that was... something. Something? Madeline hissed. That was wrong. Ryan looked at his camera screen, pale face. The handprint, it wasn't a trick of the light. He turned the camera around. The screen showed the moment we stepped outside. The print was still there. But the worst part, it was darker now, as if something was pressing against the wall from the other side. Hannah whispered, "What if we woke it up?" David took a slow breath. Then we leave before it follows. Sunset at Blackwood Ruins. As we made our way back toward the jeep, the wind picked up for the first time all day. And on that wind, faint, almost lost beneath the rustling leaves, I heard it. The whisper. Just 2 words. Come back. I didn't tell the others. Because I knew, deep down, it wasn't done with us yet. Into the heart of darkness. The sun had almost disappeared by the time we reached the jeep. Long streaks of burnt orange light cut across the ruins, bleeding into the horizon like the last desperate embers of a dying fire. But no one was admiring the sunset. Not after what we'd seen. David moved quickly, tossing his backpack into the front seat, his fingers white-knuckling the steering wheel. We'll leave. Now. No one argued. Even Ethan, usually the first to challenge superstition, looked shaken. Madeline turned, eyes darting back toward the ruins. Does it feel, I don't know, closer to you guys? I didn't want to look, but I did, and she was right. The shadows along the temple walls were longer than they should have been. They stretched unnaturally, slithering over stone like they had a mind of their own. The handprint on the doorway was darker now, sinking into the wall as if it were being pulled from the other side. Hannah swallowed. We woke something up. David threw the jeep into gear. And then we heard it. A single, clear sound, rising from deep within the ruins. Footsteps, not echoing like ours had, not wandering, following, the road that wouldn't end. David gunned the engine, and we lurched forward down the narrow dirt road. The dust cloud behind us swallowed Blackwood Ruins, but that didn't help the feeling that we weren't alone. Ethan was gripping his notebook so tightly the edges had curled. Tell me that was an echo. Ryan's eyes stayed locked on his camera screen. He wasn't blinking. It wasn't. The footage replayed over and over in his hands. The temple. The moment we turned away. The handprints still shifting. And then in the last second before the screen went dark, something moved. Not a shadow. Not a trick of the light. A figure emerging from the doorway. No face. No features. Just watching us leave. Ryan shut the camera off. His hands were shaking. No one spoke for a while. The Jeep rattled over the uneven road, headlights barely cutting through the thickening mist. The ruins were long gone behind us, but somehow the feeling of being watched never left. Madeline finally whispered, "How much longer until we're back in town?" David exhaled. It should have been 10 minutes ago. I turned to look at him. What? He tightened his grip on the wheel. The road isn't ending. The loop. The headlights swept over the path ahead, illuminating the same twisted trees we passed minutes ago. I recognized a pile of crumbling stones along the side of the road. We'd already driven past it. Twice. Ethan pressed his hand against the window, his voice low and sharp. "We're looping." Ryan swallowed. "That's impossible." David didn't speak. His jaw was tight, knuckles pale against the wheel. Hannah turned in her seat, staring into the darkness behind us. She froze. I saw it too. The dust cloud behind the Jeep was still moving. Something was following us. Not running, not rushing, just walking, keeping pace with the vehicle. Madeline's breath hitched. "Tell me you see that." No one had to answer. The thing in the dust was moving closer. Not solid, not entirely human. A voice, barely above a whisper. "Come back." David slammed his foot on the gas. The wheels skidded, throwing up rocks and dust, but the thing in the rearview mirror never broke stride. I stared, my pulse hammering. It wasn't just one shadow anymore. There were more. Dozens. Figures peeling themselves from the trees, from the ruins, from the very night itself. And then, the road ended. The man at the crossroads. The headlights caught a figure standing in the middle of the road. Alone. Still. Blocking our way. David cursed, slamming the brakes. We skidded, tires screaming against the dirt. The Jeep stopped inches away from him. For a second, no one breathed. Then he stepped forward. He wasn't one of them. Not like the things in the ruins. This man was solid. Real. An older man in a weathered black coat, his face mostly hidden beneath the brim of a wide hat. His boots were covered in red dust, as if he had been walking for miles. David didn't move. Neither did we. The man slowly raised his hand and knocked on the hood of the Jeep. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then he smiled. "Turn around," he said. "You're not supposed to be here." The way out. No one spoke. Finally, Ethan found his voice. We've been trying to leave." The man nodded once. "You won't get out that way." He gestured behind us, toward the mist-covered road. "It doesn't want you to." Hannah's voice was barely audible. The man exhaled slowly, watching us, measuring us. "This road isn't real anymore." Something shivered in the trees, like the wind had found its voice. "The moment you stepped past sundown," the man continued, "you left the world you knew." I didn't want to ask, but I had to. "Then where are we?" The man sighed, taking a step closer. His boots crunched on the gravel, and I swore the dirt darkened beneath his feet. You're somewhere in between, he said simply. And they don't like when people walk here. Madeline pressed against the seat. Who's they? The man didn't answer. He didn't need to. We all knew. Things are in dust. The whisper in the ruins. The handprint that wouldn't fade. Ryan exhaled sharply. So, how do we leave? The man tilted his head slightly, considering. Then, follow me. And then, just like that, he turned and walked into the darkness. The shadow that followed us. We didn't have a choice. We followed. David turned the Jeep around, not back toward the ruins, but down a smaller road the man had pointed toward. The moment we did, the mist thinned. The headlights cut further, illuminating a path that hadn't been there before. The figures behind us stayed at the edge of the road, watching, waiting. Finally, the man in the hat spoke again. You were lucky tonight, he said, but they don't forget faces. No one said a word. 10 minutes later, we saw the first street light of the nearest town. And when did we turn back? The man was gone. The unfinished story. We didn't talk much after that. Not for a long time. The footage Ryan captured that night. He deleted it. Ethan filled the notebook with his usual observations. He burned it. And me? I never told anyone that I still hear the whisper sometimes. A voice, barely above the wind, calling from places I can't see. Come back. Here's the next expanded part, continuing the haunted journey with more paranormal horror, character depth, and unsettling revelations. The descent into chaos. We didn't speak for a long time after reaching town. Not in the Jeep. Not when David parked outside the dimly lit roadside motel. Not even when we checked into our rooms. But silence wasn't safety, because something had followed us. The motel that wasn't empty. The motel clerk was a woman in her 50s, her silver hair pulled into a tight bun. She barely looked up as she slid the room keys across the counter. She didn't ask questions. She already knew. David took the key first. We'll be out before dawn. The woman hesitated, then glanced at us. Her eyes lingered too long on Ethan, then on Ryan's camera. Her fingers twitched against the desk. You saw something, didn't you? Madeline's breath caught. How? I can always tell. The woman leaned in slightly. The overhead light flickered. You carry things back with you. Shadows, mostly. Ethan scoffed, trying for normal. Yeah, well, we're just here to sleep. The woman exhaled. You want? And then, softly, she added, keep the lights on. The first knock. We took 2 rooms. Room number 5, me, Hannah, and Madeline. Room number 6, Ethan, Ryan, and David. The moment we stepped inside, I felt it. Something is wrong in the air. It wasn't the smell, though the room had the faint, stale scent of dust and forgotten places. It wasn't the look, just a normal, cheap motel room with outdated furniture and a flickering TV. It was the feeling. Like the walls had seen too much. Madeline dropped her bag on the floor, exhaling sharply. I don't care if we have to cram 6 people into this room, we should not split up. Hannah sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing her temples. It's fine. We're fine. It's over. She didn't sound convinced. Outside, the wind picked up. The window rattled in its frame. I turned the bathroom light on and left the door cracked. The glow helped. A little. For exactly 20 minutes, nothing happened. Then, 3 knocks. Slow. Deliberate. Not at the front door. The closet. We all froze. I looked at Hannah. She looked at me. Madeline whispered, Did you? 3 more knocks. Louder. Madeline grabbed my arm. Don't open it! I wasn't planning to. We stared at the door. It was just a closet. An old wooden door with a rusty handle. Probably empty. Probably. Hannah stood carefully. We need to tell the others. 3 more knocks. This time, the handle turned. The hallway that wasn't ours. We ran. The second we flung open the door, I knew something was wrong. The hallway was different. Longer. Too long. The overhead lights buzzed, flickering like they were struggling to stay on. The motel should have been small, just a handful of rooms leading to the parking lot. But as we stepped into the hall, the exit door was gone. The hallway kept stretching. Hannah sucked in breath. This isn't real. Madeline reached for her phone. No service. I turned toward room 6. It felt like it was miles away now. We need to get to the guys. We started walking. Then, the closet door creaked open behind us, and a voice whispered our names. Inside room 6. David opened the door before we even knocked. His face was pale. Get inside. Now. We did. Ethan was sitting on the bed, his hands gripping his notebook like a lifeline. Ryan had the camera on, but his hands were shaking too much to hold it steady. Something's wrong, Madeline said, breathless. David locked the door. Yeah, we know. Ryan looked up. Did you hear the knocking? We all turned toward him. From the closet? I asked. Ryan's face went rigid. Ethan finally spoke. His voice was too quiet. It wasn't knocking in here. The hairs on my arms lifted. Ethan swallowed. It was scratching. Silence. Then 3 knocks. From inside room 6 closet. Madeline was already shaking her head. Don't open it. But the handle turned anyway. What was inside? The knob rattled, shaking violently, like someone was trying to get out. Ryan lifted his camera. The lens focused on the wooden slats, the way they trembled, the way the light bulged through the cracks like something was pressing against the door from the inside. Ethan stood slowly, gripping his notebook like a weapon. Wait, he whispered. Listen. We did. And through the door, we heard ourselves. Not an echo, not a trick. Our own voices. From inside the closet. Ryan's breath hitched. Is it copying us? David stepped forward, jaw tight. No, it's not copying. He gripped the handle. It's remembering. Then, the door burst open, and the lights went out. The thing that crawled. In the dark, I felt it. A rush of cold air. Something moving past me, too fast, too silent. The closet was empty now. Whatever had been inside. It wasn't trapped anymore. Ryan fumbled for the flashlight, clicked it on, and caught the thing on camera. For a split second I saw it. Something low to the ground, its limbs wrong, bending in too many places. It moved like a spider, long fingers skittering against the floor. Then, it was gone. The flashlight flickered out, and we were left in the dark, breathing, listening, waiting. The motel clerk's warning. We didn't sleep. The lights never stayed on. The hallway never shrank back to its real size. And every few hours, the closet door creaked open again. By morning, we were packed. None of us said a word. As we reached the front desk, the clerk was already waiting. She glanced at us, at our faces, on the way our shadows stretched wrong across the tile floor. And then she said softly, "You took something with you." Ryan's grip tightened on his camera. "What?" She sighed. "It's never the same thing twice. Could be a whisper, a shadow, a name you'll dream about." I felt the weight in my chest. I knew what mine was, because I still heard the voice. And when I turned toward the motel mirror, the reflection didn't move. The unfinished story. We left. We didn't look back. But I know the ruins aren't done with us yet, because every night since, I've heard the knocking, and one night soon, I know, something will knock back. The revelation of the forest's curse. We drove in silence for hours. The highway stretched long and empty, endless ribbons of asphalt disappearing into the horizon. None of us slept. None of us spoke about what happened at the motel. Because if we did, it might start again. Ryan sat in the back, staring out the window. His camera was off for the first time since the trip began. Hannah hadn't looked at her notes. Madeline had barely touched her phone. Ethan, he just sat there, notebook closed, knuckles white. David was the only one who looked like he'd seen this before. And maybe he had. The detour. The map said we were nearing Black Hollow Forest. David muttered, "We're taking the long way." Ethan finally glanced up. "Why?" David's hands tightened on the wheel. "The shorter route cuts through the woods." Madeline frowned. "And?" David didn't answer right away. "Then, there's another place people don't come back from. That should have been enough to turn us around. But Ethan wanted answers. And he didn't believe in warnings." The road into the trees. The highway narrowed, merging into a winding back road that slithered into a thick wall of trees. The second we passed the first twisted oak, I felt it. The change. Like the motel. Like the ruins. Like the world behind us had peeled away. The road darkened under the weight of the tree canopy, light filtering through in scattered patches. Hannah muttered, "I don't like this." David exhaled sharply. "That makes two of us." But Ethan was watching GPS. "It says this road doesn't exist." No one replied. Because the forest was watching. I could feel it. I think we all could. "The thing in the trees." Ryan whispered first. "Did you see that?" David didn't look up. "See what?" Ryan lifted his camera again, but he didn't press the record. Because something had moved. Not a deer. Not the wind. Something tall and wrong was standing between the trees. Watching. Hannah sucked in breath. "Ethan, tell me you see it too." Ethan pressed his hand against the glass, staring out the window. "I see it." For the first time since we met him, Ethan looked afraid. The road that kept going. Madeline whispered, "How long have we been driving?" I checked my phone. It was still 3:12 p.m. Ryan checked his. Same time. Hannah's voice was tight. "It hasn't changed." David cursed under his breath and slammed the brakes. We skidded to a stop. Dust swirled around us. "We should have been out of here by now." Silence. Then, the first knock. Not from the Jeep. From the trees. A slow, deliberate knocking sound. Like someone was knocking on wood. Once. Twice. 3 times. David locked the doors. The ritual. The knocking didn't stop. It echoed through the woods, like it was moving between the trees. "Closer." Ethan whispered, "What does it mean?" David didn't answer. He reached into the glove compartment, pulled out a knife. Hannah's eyes widened. "What the hell are you?" He sliced his palm. Then he pressed it against the dashboard. The knocking stopped. Ryan swallowed. "What the hell was that?" David exhaled. "A toll." Silence. "This place takes things," he muttered. "If you don't give it something, it takes you." The woman on the road. We thought it was over. It wasn't. Madeline saw her first. Standing in the middle of the road. Not moving. Not speaking. Just standing. Wearing white. Head tilted. Arms limp at her sides. "Oh my God," Hannah whispered. Ethan sat frozen. Ryan grabbed his camera. The screen flickered violently. David didn't slow down. "Close your eyes." No one did. The woman didn't move. We hit her. Except, we didn't. We passed right through her. Madeline screamed. David kept driving. The woman wasn't in the rearview mirror. She was beside us. Walking. Keeping pace with the car. Then softly, she knocked on the window. The crossroads. The GPS glitched out. The road ahead split in two. David muttered, "If we go the wrong way, we don't come back." Ethan's voice was sharp. "Which way?" David exhaled, then turned left. And just like that, the forest disappeared. The sun was back. The road was normal again. The trees were gone. Ryan let out a shaky breath. Jesus Christ. Hannah checked her phone. 3:13 p.m. We had only lost 1 minute. The unfinished story. We never took the short journey again. David never explained how he knew which way to turn. Ethan never asked for proof of ghosts again. Ryan never reviewed the footage. And me? I still hear it. The knocking on the trees. And sometimes, I still see her. Waiting for us to come back. The ritual of release. We should have left. We should never have looked back. But the moment we crossed out of the forest, something felt wrong. Not just wrong, unfinished. Like the forest had let us go too easily. Like it was waiting for something else. The first sign. The motel should have been far behind us. The ruins should have been long gone. But when we checked into a new town for the night, something wasn't right. Ryan pulled up his camera files. We never recorded that drive. Hannah frowned. What? Ryan scrolled through every video. The forest drive. The woman in white. The knocking. It was all gone. Not erased. Not corrupted. It never existed. Ethan whispered, "It took it." No one disagreed. The second sign. At 3:12 a.m., I woke up scratching. From inside the closet. Not the slow, testing scratches from the motel. No. This was frantic. Like something was trying to get out. I turned to Madeline and Hannah. Both slept. The air felt heavier. I reached for my phone. The screen flickered. Then, a message. Just 2 words. "Come back." I sat up, heart hammering. The closet door creaked open. I didn't look. I didn't move. I just waited. And then softly, a knock on the window. The third sign. At sunrise we packed. David was already by the Jeep, arms crossed, watching us. Ethan stepped outside last. He was shaking. Madeline noticed first. "What's wrong?" Ethan swallowed. Then he turned his notebook around. Pages ripped. Ink smeared. The words are written over and over again. "Come back, come back, come back." Ryan exhaled. Jesus Christ. David slammed the trunk shut. No one's going back. Except we didn't have a choice. The call that changed everything. The gas station was empty when we pulled in. David went inside. The rest of us stayed in the Jeep. Ryan turned his phone over in his hands. Maybe we just... Ethan's phone rang. We all froze. His screen was blank. No number. No caller ID. Just ringing. And then Ryan's phone rang too. Then Madeline's. Then mine. One by one. The exact same time. 3:12 p.m. Ethan answered. "Hello?" Silence. Then from the other end, "Come back." The return to Black Hollow Forest. We should have driven away. We should have burned our notebooks. We should have never answered the call. But by sunset we were already on the road back. The air got thicker the closer we got. The forest was waiting. The second we passed the tree line, the GPS turned off. The radio died. The time on the dashboard froze. 3:12 p.m. Again. And then from the darkness ahead of us, a woman stood in the road, waiting, smiling. The final toll. David didn't slow down this time. "Close your eyes," he said. No one listened. The woman in white didn't move. As we passed, she turned her head unnaturally fast, following us. And then she started walking. The Jeep engine roared. Faster. But she never fell behind. She was inside the car now, sitting between us, whispering, "Come back." The ritual that never ended. We never made it out that night. The forest had swallowed us whole. The road? Gone. The Jeep? Stopped. And the woman in white? She was standing at the edge of the trees, waiting. Ethan turned the last page in his notebook. His hand was shaking. "I know what it wants." We all turned to him. David whispered, "What?" Ethan lifted his head. Eyes are glassy, distant. "It wants a name. The final choice." We stood in a perfect circle, like the carvings in the ruins, like the drawings in Ethan's notebook. The woman in white watched. David muttered, "This is a trap." Hannah's voice was barely there. "We don't have a choice." Ethan stepped forward. "We have to say a name." Ryan whispered, "Whose?" Ethan didn't answer. Then David grabbed his knife. "I'll do it." Madeline gasped. "David, don't." Too late. He cut his palm. Blood hit the dirt. And in a voice that wasn't his, he said one name. The forest shuddered. The woman in white vanished. And just like that, we were standing on the highway again. The unfinished story. We never spoke about whose name he said. David never told us. We never asked. But weeks later, Ryan checked the footage. And in the last recording, as we stood in that circle, as David whispered the name, the camera picked up something else. Another voice. Behind us. Laughing. And then, softly, "See you soon." Reflections in the aftermath. We should have felt relief. We should never have looked back. But when we left Black Hollow Forest, something left with us. The first omen. It started 3 days later. Ethan was the first to notice. He woke up to footsteps in his apartment. Soft. Deliberate. Pacing outside his bedroom door. His phone screen flickered to life. 3:12 a.m. His breath hitched. "Hello." The footsteps stopped. The door clicked open. And a voice, too familiar, too close, whispered, "Come back." The second omen. Madeline saw it next. She was working late, finishing edits on her laptop. Alone. Her phone vibrated once. A notification. One new photo in her gallery. She didn't take it. Her hands were cold. She opened it anyway. A blurry image. A mirror. Her reflection was smiling. She wasn't. And behind her, a woman in white, watching, waiting. The third omen. Ryan's footage should have been gone. But it wasn't. A single file remained. Unlabeled. Corrupted. He clicked on it. The screen flickered. Then, a face. Not a person. Not quite human. Just a wide mouth. Grinning. Then, static. And a whisper, layered over his own voice. "See you soon." The fourth omen. David didn't speak about what happened in the woods. Not for a long time. Then one night he called me. His voice was flat. Tired. "They know my name now." I sat up. "What?" David exhaled slowly. "They keep saying it. When I sleep. When I wake up. When I drive. Who does?" Static on the line. Then, softly, all of them. The return of the road that never ends. It was a mistake to meet up again. But we did. A cheap dinner off the highway. Same table. Same seats. Like if we pretended it never happened, we could go back to normal. Hannah broke first. "This isn't over, is it?" Ryan shook his head. "No. Ethan swallowed hard. It wants us back. David didn't look up. We never really left. The decision. I don't know why we did it. Maybe because we were already haunted. Maybe because we knew that if we waited too long, it would come to us instead. So at 3:12 a.m. we packed the Jeep and drove back. The woman who was waiting, the forest was waiting too. The second we crossed the tree line, the headlights flickered out. The road behind us disappeared. And in the middle of the path, standing in the fog, the woman in white, smiling, still, arms at her sides, waiting. We slowed to a stop, and this time, she spoke, not a whisper, not an echo. Her voice, clear and terrible. You took something from us. David gripped the wheel. Ryan whispered, what do we do? David exhaled sharply. Get out. The final offering. The air was wrong. Heavy. Thick. Like we had stepped somewhere between time. David stepped forward. What do you want? The woman in white tilted her head. The trees around us shuddered. A second voice joined her. Then a third. Then dozens. Whispering. Laughing. Crying. Then, the forest answered. A name. David turned to us. Madeline's voice was small. We already gave one. The woman in white smiled wider. We want more. The choice. Ethan looks sick. This is a trap. David didn't blink. Yeah, I know. Ryan turned the camera on. His hands were shaking. The voices grew louder. David pulled out his knife. And we knew. We knew what came next. The unfinished story. The forest took someone that night. But we don't talk about who. We never say their name. Because if we do, they might come back. And the forest might take more. Because now, every night at 3:12 a.m., I still hear the whisper. A voice just behind my ear. Come back. And sometimes, I think I will. The door that should not exist. Picture this. It's the dead of night, and I'm sitting here staring at my laptop screen. The cursor blinks, almost mocking me, and I can't shake this creepy feeling crawling up my spine. For a split second, I swear I see a reflection that's not quite me. The silence in my apartment is deafening, broken only by the soft hum of my computer. I just moved into this place a couple weeks back. It's nothing fancy, old cheap, with that weird charm you find in buildings that have seen better days. But there's one thing that's been bugging me since day one. That door at the end of the hall. Now this door? It's not supposed to be there. It's not on any floor plan, and the landlord never breathed a word about it. It's locked up tight, bolted from the outside like someone wanted to keep whatever's inside from getting out. When I asked about it, the landlord just gave me this look and said best to leave it be. Didn't say another word about it. But at night, that's when things get weird. I start hearing these taps coming from the other side. Not loud, just there. Like someone's knocking, but not to get out. More like they want you to know they're there. And then the whispers start. They're quiet, urgent, but I can't make out a single word. It's like they're seeping through the cracks in the wood, too weak to form real words but strong enough to reach me. I tried to tell myself it was just the building settling. Old places make noise, right? But then one night, I came home late, and those bolts on the door? They were undone. The air felt wrong, heavy, like something was pressing down on me. My heart was pounding as I reached for the handle, feeling the cold brass under my fingers. And then, silence. The whispers stopped, but I heard something else. A long, slow breath from the other side of that door. I didn't open it that night. But now, as I'm sitting here typing this out, that door is open just a crack. Not enough to see inside, but enough to feel eyes on me. And you know what the scariest part is? I don't remember opening it. Let me spin you a tale of terror that'll make your skin crawl. Picture this. I'm sitting in my new apartment, cheap as chips and quiet as a mouse. Perfect for a writer like me, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. It's been 3 weeks since I moved in, and I'm telling you, something isn't right. I'm perched in front of my laptop, cursor blinking away. When it hits me, I'm not the one calling the shots anymore. From day one, weird stuff started happening. Little things at first, you know? A creak here, a shadow there. But as the days ticked by, it got worse. Much worse. Sleep. Forget about it. I couldn't close my eyes without feeling like something was watching me, waiting for me to let my guard down. Now, I'm not saying the place is haunted, but actually, you know what? That's exactly what I'm saying. This apartment's got more spirits than a liquor store, and they're not the friendly kind. They're the kind that make you question your sanity, that make you jump at every little sound. So here I am, trying to write, trying to pretend everything's normal. But let me tell you, friend, normally flew out the window the moment I signed that lease. And now I'm just hoping I make it through another night in this godforsaken place. The beginning, a new home, a place with more character than a soap opera cast. You know how some folks go gaga for shiny new condos? Not me. I'm a sucker for those creaky old buildings. The ones where you can almost hear the walls whispering secrets from a century ago. So there I was, checking out this apartment that was older than dirt. Everything was going swimming until I spotted this little trapdoor in the ceiling, right smack in the middle of the hallway. Now, I'm no Sherlock, but even I could see there was no way to reach it. No ladder, no rope, nada. Being the curious cat I am, I asked the landlord about it. Big mistake. The guy went cryptic on me, warning me not to open it like it was Pandora's box or something. It's unsafe, he said, clammed up tighter than a drum after that. I shrugged it off, figuring every old place has its quirks, right? Oh boy, I was in for a surprise. First night in my new pad, everything's peachy keen until the witching hour rolls around. 2 a.m, I'm jolted awake by this weird thumping noise coming from above. At first I tried to convince myself it was just the building doing its thing, you know. But then I heard this shuffling, like someone was dragging their feet across the floor up there. Let me tell you, my heart started doing the cha-cha in my chest. I sat up faster than a jack-in-the-box, eyes glued to the ceiling. I flipped on every light in the joint and searched high and low, but came up empty-handed. Eventually I crawled back to bed, but sleep, forget about it. I was more wired than a kid on Christmas Eve. That night, I learned the hard way that sometimes ignorance really is bliss. The middle, when things got scary. Night after night, the weird noises kept coming back, and they were getting louder. Around midnight, I'd hear what sounded like someone with a limp walking around up there. Sometimes there'd be this scraping sound, like they were dragging something heavy across the floor. Other times, I'd catch these faint whispers. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but it was enough to give me goosebumps. Each night, the sounds got clearer, more deliberate. It was like whatever was up there knew I was listening in. By the third night, I couldn't take it anymore. My curiosity was stronger than my fear. I decided to check it out myself. I went to the hardware store and picked up a little stepladder. As it got dark, I set it up right under the trapdoor. My hands were shaking, but I was determined to see what was going on up there. I climbed up and put my ear against the wood. Inside, I could hear something moving around in the darkness. I took a deep breath and tried to push the door open, but it wouldn't budge. It felt like something on the other side was holding it shut. I was frustrated and scared out of my mind. I called the landlord again. He sounded beat when he picked up, but he just repeated his warning. Stay away from the attic. He wouldn't explain why, which only made me more nervous. I hung up feeling a mix of anger and dread. That night things got even worse. I heard heavy, uneven footsteps above me, followed by a series of quick taps that made my skin crawl. Then I heard a desperate whisper coming from behind the trapdoor. It sounded like pleading, but in a language I didn't understand. I backed away, my heart racing, and locked myself in my bedroom for the rest of the night. The breaking point, a night of terror. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about that attic. So the next night, I decided to face my fears head on. I grabbed my trusty flashlight and an old crowbar, my heart pounding as I set up the ladder under that ominous trapdoor. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped the crowbar as I climbed up. I wedged it under the edge of the door and pushed with all my might. The wood creaked and groaned, and a shower of dust made me blink furiously. Finally it budged, just a couple of inches, but enough to shine my light inside. But before I could get a good look, all hell broke loose. Something slammed against the door from the other side, nearly knocking me off the ladder. I yelped, fumbling at the crowbar. It hit the floor below with a clang that probably woke the whole neighborhood. Panic took over. I scrambled down that ladder like my life depended on it, which, who knows? Maybe it did. The trapdoor snapped shut with a vicious crack, catching my fingers. I barely felt the pain as I stumbled back, gasping for air, my mind reeling. What in the world was up there? And more importantly, what was I going to do about it now? The end. A chilling discovery. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about that trapdoor. When I checked it again that morning, my blood ran cold. There were scratch marks near one corner, like something had been trying to claw its way out. I wanted to bolt right then and there, but my wallet had other ideas. So, I decided to face whatever was lurking up there head on. As night fell, I found myself standing under that cursed trapdoor again. This time, I came, prepared with a better flashlight and a whole lot of nerves. I nailed the ladder to the floor. No way was I letting it slip. Taking a deep breath, I climbed up and pushed. The door creaked open wider than before, revealing a narrow staircase disappearing into darkness. My heart was pounding. I started up those stairs. What I saw next, I'll never forget it. The attic was a graveyard of forgotten furniture, everything coated in dust. But there, right in the middle, stood a man. He was tall, skinny as a rail, wearing clothes that were falling apart. His face was ghostly pale, eyes sunken and empty. His lips were moving, but no sound came out. Before I could even think of screaming, he lunged at me. I felt his ice-cold fingers brush my arm as I stumbled backward, tumbling down the stairs and hitting the hallway floor hard. When I looked up, the trapdoor was shut tight, and everything was quiet. I haven't dared open that door since. But every night I hear it, the shuffling, scratching, whispering. It's getting louder, like whatever's up there is getting restless. I've thought about moving, but part of me wonders if that would just make things worse. That thing up there knows I'm here now, and I don't think it's planning on going anywhere.